Our keynote speaker is someone whom I absolutely adore. He's my personal cyber safety hero, and he's going to talk to us about why our cyberpunk future is here, but it's not evenly distributed. So let's hear a little bit about him, okay? Beau Woods. Beau Woods is from the I Am the Cavalry grassroots movement of friendly hackers. He has many roles with DEF CON and with different villages, like the Aerospace Village, the ICS Village, and the Biohacking Village. He's also the co-author of the popular book, Practical IoT Hacking, bestseller on Amazon. And of course, he participates many years in DEF CON and BSides. In fact, Beau brought me to my very first BSides Las Vegas. Now, one more fun fact about our speaker, as I see he's ready backstage, he was a volunteer at the very first BSidesTLV 2021. Beau, are you ready? Okay, he will be ready in a second. We're gonna give him a very warm BSidesTLV welcome, because Beau Woods is going to show us how our cyberpunk future is becoming a reality. Let's give him a warm round of applause. Beau, the stage is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And remember, masks on until you are on stage. Thank you very much. This is, I think it's my third time to Israel. I think it's my third BSides, although my first one speaking. So I'm very, very excited to be here, to be able to talk to everybody. As I was putting this together, I really had to kind of come to grips with what does it mean to be cyberpunk, and what does it mean to evenly distribute a cyberpunk future. So I want to take you through some thoughts on that. First, my day. So this morning, my term woke me up at 6:30, way too early. And then I got my pre-measured stims, coffee in the form of, caffeine in the form of coffee. Then I hailed a ride with my term, as we do these days. Checked my crypto credits while I was waiting. Turns out they're down, sorry. And then, I wasn't the first one in the car, it was a shared ride. So I turned my phones to blocking mode so that I could silence all the noise. But it was okay. I'm sure they didn't want to talk. They were already too busy jacked into the net and watching movies. And then when I came here into the event, my Vax code passed. I wore my mask, so my mask checked out, and here I am. And so this is the cyberpunk reality that I think is evenly distributed today. This is what we're all living through right now. Looking around at so many masked faces and realizing that this is what we thought the future was going to be like 20 years ago because of pollution and smog. Little did we know that it would be because of a global pandemic. What does the future of cyberpunk look like? And how is it already here? Well, most of us probably recognize this video from, yesterday, 2 days ago? This is the Jeff Bezos space rocket that he launched off into low Earth orbit. I think he got somewhere around a minute worth of 0G. And he followed Richard Branson into space. Richard Branson, of course, another billionaire who has his eyes set on going to space and spending more time there. And then, of course, Elon Musk famously wants to spend his last days on Mars. But this is more than just a bunch of billionaires trying to one-up each other, trying to get into space to prove that they can. There's much more beyond that. And if you recognize this video, this is the speech from 1961 where John F. Kennedy inspired us to go to the moon, not just as a nation, but as humanity itself, bringing all the world to the moon. He said, we choose to go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it is hard. And he inspired a lot of cyberpunk authors. Now, the moonshot, the original moonshot, it built on well-known physics. So we already knew the physics of orbital dynamics and motion, but we needed new materials engineering. We needed to have new ways of channeling all of the creativity that we had within the scientific community, within the engineering community, into this major endeavor. And beyond just the moon, we also have to look at space, deeper space. Someday, maybe in the not too distant future, we will be conducting space mining operations. Now, there's a scale of civilization maturity that posits different levels of civilization will have different energy capture and use capabilities. Type 1 is a planetary civilization. These are civilizations that use the entire planet's energy sources all at once. Then stellar civilizations use an entire star's energy source with something like a Dyson sphere to capture all of the energy coming out of their star. Type 3, galactic civilizations are even bigger. They tap into black holes at the center of the universe, or at the center of the galaxy. Now, we're on about 0.72. I was reading on the internet, so we know it must be true. About a 0.72 on this scale. So we are almost to the scale where we're going to go beyond our planet and start using the rest of our stellar resources. But there's something else in that rocket ship that took off yesterday, and it's the idea of rapid global transport by going out of the atmosphere. I know in a lot of the cyberpunk books, they have to get a character from one place to another really rapidly, and they use this type of technology to do that. And it's amazing to read about what we have today in some of the space flights that we're doing, and see that this might become a reality. You know, within our lifetimes, it might be possible to go New York to Tel Aviv in 2 hours. That's absolutely amazing. And you might be saying, oh, that's too far off, it'll never happen. Well, if we go back in time and look at flight, you know, just regular, ordinary, plain old flight, from the 1940s to now, it's changed massively. It has massively democratized the ability for us to travel around the world. Boston to Los Angeles in the 40s was a multi-hour endurance race. 12 stops, 15 hours. That sounds grueling. I don't know that I would want to be on that flight. And it cost the equivalent of $4,500 US. Today, it's a third of the time, nonstop, and you can have it for a tenth of the price. This is an amazing transition, and again, this is within a single lifespan. But let's switch it up a little bit. Let's go from space travel to something closer to us, medicine. We're in the midst of multiple concurrent revolutions in healthcare. There's so much going on in healthcare. It's absolutely astounding. And I don't want to go into all of this. I have about an hour-long talk where I go into all of the cool things that are going on in healthcare and biohacking, but I just want to touch on a few of them. There are experiments right now. There are actual working machines. We're at the engineering stage where you can regrow human tissue. People are talking about replacing things like your ear or internal organs even through bioreactors. This is absolutely phenomenal technology. It's crazy to think about that this is within our reach today. And in fact, there are some biohackers who are playing with this, and they're doing things like producing insulin in a couple of jars that they have set up that they built for less than $50. We have automated surgical robots. Now, this full video, you can see that the robot slices off the skin of the grape and then sews it back up. And it's doing it autonomously. And it's a robot doing it. The capabilities that this brings to potentially get more expert care to more people is phenomenal. Again, democratizing and making these things available. But our dystopian future is also on the precipice. It is here, it's just not realized yet. Again, going back to this view, multiple concurrent revolutions, but they depend on AI, which we're only really starting to understand fully. Data-driven, and we know the problems that we have protecting the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data today. Code-controlled, hyper-connected. These are issues that we have today, security issues and challenges that we haven't yet solved today, let alone in future technologies like bioreactors, in future technologies like surgical robots, where the conditions may be very different than what we find today in computers, laptops, servers, mobile devices. And I want to talk about a couple of these. So there's some amazing technology out there for victims of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, where you can stimulate their brainstem and help them recover faster. This can also help with epilepsy. It can help with all kinds of things. And some of these devices are going through clinical trials right now. And some of the doctors have found that the patients are actually modifying the devices so that they can get high from them. Now, this is not a technology that anyone would have imagined 20 years ago. You would have neural implants so that you could get high, except in cyberpunk fiction. But it is a reality today. It's just not distributed to everyone. This is an actress, Angel Jafra, and she was in the Hunger Games movies, which is a dystopian film, but it's not a cyberpunk film. She has a prosthetic hand, and this is actually a bionic hand. She controls it by moving certain muscles in her upper arm. This hand recharges via Bluetooth, if you can believe it, or by a USB, and it has Bluetooth connectivity. So when I talked to her, I invited her to come out to DEF CON and talk to people, and she said, I'm afraid. I don't know if somebody's going to hack my hand. This is the world that we're starting to live in. And she asked a really interesting question, which is, if I want to go to the digital equivalent of a gym to, improve the strength of this hand, do I have the right to do that? If it breaks, do I have the right to even repair it? I don't know. These are legal questions. They're challenges that we're going to have to address. This is our cyberpunk dystopian future where we may not even be in control of our bodies. And then this one's really interesting. This is a woman named Crom, and she has a few talks, including this great TED Talk, talking about the end of the poker face. And when we have the ability to capture high-quality sensory emanations, thermal video, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide monitoring, some of these other things that we just give off naturally, it reveals our internal state in a way that we've never been able to do before. Essentially, you may never be able to tell another lie or have somebody believe you in that lie. It won't be very convincing. And as I was talking to her, I slowly started to realize that it's scary that we might never be able to tell a lie. It's even scarier to realize we may not ever be able to lie to ourselves. Think about how many rationalizations we make on a daily basis. How many fictions we have to tell ourselves to get through the day. What's that going to do to us? Again, this is the dystopian cyber future that we're already living in. Okay, so what do we do to change that? How can we be better? How can we make the world that we want to see? Not the world that dystopian fiction tells us has to exist, but the world that we want to exist as passionate, creative hackers in this room. Well, I'll again go back to this video of John F. Kennedy because it's inspirational. It sets a clear vision for what we want, where we're going, what we want to do. And I would like to inspire everyone and encourage everyone to start building, not just breaking. Breaking is fun. There's lots of work in breaking things. But breaking isn't fundamentally a generative activity. It doesn't create the future we want to see. Kind of like, race cars can only go fast because they have good brakes. A race car's top speed is actually limited by its ability to brake, because going around corners, you want to be safe. But you can't create a fast race car. You can't create a rocket ship just with the things that are going to make it safe. You have to do it with everything else, including the things that will make it safe. I think we can draw on the known physics of security. We might not know all the things to do to protect ourselves in cybersecurity, but we at least know how to avoid what we can reliably say fails. So let's start avoiding those things. And let's creatively apply ourselves into new engineering. This is a competition held last year at the virtual DEF CON. The follow-up is going to be held this year at DEF CON in a couple of weeks. It's the Hack-A-Sat competition. With the Aerospace Village They're inviting you to come and hack a satellite in orbit. What does it look like to hack a satellite? Well, what does it look like to secure a satellite? When you're putting something up into space, it's going to be thousands of miles away from the nearest fix-it lab. You can't just bring that in and update it, change out the hardware, upgrade the software. You have low bandwidth, high latency connections. These are totally different environmental conditions. You have totally different technologies that are up there. What does it mean to have something that you know has to last for decades in a way that you can't engage with it, can't repair it like you would a terrestrial system? We're going to have to apply what we know about security into these new domains and build it in rather than trying to bolt it on. Work with the companies. Go to work with somebody who inspires you, somebody who's exciting, one of these space companies, one of the healthcare companies, where the conditions are very different than what you might see in your regular job. My first job out of college, my first job in security, was working at a hospital where the conditions that I found myself in were very different from the conditions that I found later when I was working for financial services organizations, for instance. In healthcare, if you lock someone out of an account to preserve the confidentiality of data, you might inadvertently come into conflict with preserving the integrity and availability of human life. So how do we secure those healthcare systems? How do we preserve the hope, the promise of all of this amazing, incredible technology? I believe that the future health of our species is going to be dependent on the trust we can place in the technology in healthcare. How do we ensure that people trust this technology, that they will adopt it, so that they can have the best care possible? And then finally, how do we think about equity and inclusion? After 1969, when the first astronauts landed on the moon, Gil Scott-Heron did an amazing spoken word, and I would encourage you to go check it out, where he's effectively highlighting the vast gap between the haves and the have-nots. Even after we went to the moon, the future was not well distributed. And so he goes through and talks about challenges of the members of his community to pay the rent, to get health care, to get access to enough food to eat and enough water to drink so that they could make a life for themselves and live out that dream of providing for your families. So how do we make sure that we're not inadvertently biasing the future we're building, the benefits towards the wealthy or towards small groups, and all of the hardships towards the less wealthy or other groups, the majority of groups? And as Karen mentioned, cyberpunk is a lot about low lifes and high tech. Well, how do we have high tech for all? And so that the people who are in the lower status, lower strata of society can also be raised and lifted along with everyone else. And I want to leave with a couple of quotes. The first one is, Sheryl Sandberg said, "If you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, you don't ask what seat, you just get on." That's kind of true. But what if this is your seat? What if you're shoveling coal? Wouldn't be coal on the rocket ship. But what if you're the thing that is the fuel for it? You don't reap the benefits, you only have the hardships. How do we actually get towards a cyberpunk future that we can all appreciate, all take advantage of, and all benefit from? The second quote is a guy named Stuart Brand. He's one of the early environmental movement pioneers, actually one of the early computing pioneers as well. And he said, "We are as gods, and we might as well get good at it." And that was in 1968. I think that's changed a little bit. I think we are as gods, and we must get good at it for the future of humanity, for the future of our planet, for the future of all of our children, our grandchildren, to ensure that they can realize the dreams of high tech without the dystopian parts of it. And so I want to leave you with a thought. This is a thought that inspired us to create I Am the Cavalry in 2013. It is that the cavalry isn't coming. The responsibility falls to us, to each one of us, to take an active role in shaping the future how we want to see it. Not just leaving it to someone else, not saying, somebody else is going to take care of this, or I'm sure, top people are working on it, but to actually jump in, to get involved, to get engaged, to put a little bit of ourselves out there, to make the future what we want to see it, a much better one for all of us. And with that, I'd like to thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Beau. Wait a minute, I want to get like a hero shot with you together, and I also want my clicker, our clicker. Wasn't Beau just fantastic? Yes, you can give him another round of applause. So, Beau went through a lot of effort to be here in Tel Aviv today, and we really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Beau.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to